Hi, my name is Jake Servin. I'm a full stack developer, and today I just wanted to showcase my full stack React project that I made. It is also a MERN application, so you'll see the use of MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. So we will go ahead and start off by starting the servers. Alrighty. First, we'll start the backend server, and then our front end server. So the name of my app is called GetAway. The basic functionality of this app is to allow users to be able to plan a trip and an itinerary with the ability to collaborate with other users on the same trip. So here you can see we have different options: new trips, sign in, register. So if we try to access the new trip button or the start planning button without being signed in, then you'll be automatically redirected to the sign in page. So here we'll create a new account for John Smith. All right, and then we get brought to the sign-in page. So if we go to our MongoDB database in the users table and we refresh the page, you should see the new user has been added with a hash password so we can protect our users' data. And then if we try to sign in with those credentials, then you can see the navbar has now changed to show my trips and sign out instead of the sign in and register button. This is because the navbar uses a useEffect hook that checks if a user is currently logged in, and if they are, then we will show this button and not the sign in and register buttons. And once we get that information, we can get the information of the currently logged in users and access their planned trips. So as you can see, we don't have any trips planned yet. So we can go to start planning or new trip. And we can plan John's bachelor party. And we're gonna have it in Las Vegas and be classic. And we're just gonna go for a simple weekend, maybe Friday through Monday. And then as you can see, we get rerouted to a page, vacations, with the ID of this ID right here, this vacation ID. And if we go to our MongoDB database, we can see that a new vacation has been added with the name John's Bachelor Party, the ID of the user who created it, the dates, and the location. So if we go to this vacation details page, you can see an itinerary has been made for each day. And if we click on it, that can be easily dragged down. And then we can start adding some activities. So let's say on the first day, we want to check into the hotel. And then maybe we'll get some dinner. And as you can see, it displays the information of the user who added it and an option to delete the task. And because we are logged in and this data is being sent to the database, if we refresh the page, then we should see our changes persist. And because the user is using a logged in under a session, if we try to access the same website under the same browser, then you'll see the same user information loads here. So here we have John's bachelor party, and we can easily get back to the same reservation. So if John wanted to share this reservation with a friend and start collaborating, then what we'll do is go ahead and open up another browser. And since this is under incognito, the session is not saved between these two browsers, and so we can sign in under a different user. We'll go ahead and use this user. And as you can see, our information changes again. We can see this user's trips. And then we can also access a trip by an ID. So here we can also get access to John's bachelor party. And if we look at the itinerary, we can see what John has added. And if we don't like what we see, maybe delete that and change it to something else. And if John were to refresh his page, he should see those same changes added. Alright, so that's pretty much the basic functionality of the front end of my website. So now we will go into a little bit more of the code. So in our server folder, we have our back end server. So let's start with the main file, server.js. We have all of our requires right here and our port defined, our express variable, our middleware, and our passport middleware. We have the connection to MongoDB and the feedback on that connection. We have our routes right here. And then we have the feedback of whether or not the server is started. So if we go into passport config real quick, we can see how the passport local strategy is defined. So here we define the local strategy, and we search the user model table to find a username matching a username in the database. And we have a callback function that returns an error or a user. And if an error is returned, we're going to throw the error. And if there's no user found under that username, we are going to return null and false. And then if there is a user, we are going to compare the entered password with the encrypted password. And if there's an error, we will throw it. If successful, we will log in the user. Otherwise, we will not log in the user. Here we have the serialization to establish the session, and then here we have the deserialization. Going into our routes.js file, we have our requires right here, and then we have our different routes. So this login user route will use the passport local strategy that I just explained and take in that error and user parameters, and if we have an error, we will throw it. And if the user does not exist, then we will say that there is an invalid username or password. However, if that user is found, then we will try to log in that user. And if there's an error, we will throw it. And if not, then we will send that user information back to the front end. The next one, we have our register user, which uses something pretty similar to the login user. But here, if we don't get any user returned, what we're going to do is create a new one, hash the password, and then save that into the database. Here, we have the ability to get the user by specific ID. So we search the database and to find an ID matching this ID that we have sent in. And if successful, we are going to send that username back from the ID. The next one we have is used by the navbar to check if a user is currently logged in, and then if so, we will update our global Redux variables to show that we have a user logged in and set that user information in the global state. The next route is the logout function, which logs out the currently logged in user and then returns to the home page if hit. Our next route adds a vacation to the database and then sends that vacation information back, so that way we can load the vacation details page based off of the newly created vacation ID. Next, we have the ability to get all of the vacations created in the vacation table. Then we have the get vacation route used by the vacation details page, which finds a specific vacation based off of that vacation ID. So whenever we enter a new vacations page, it searches the ID, grabs that vacation information, and then loads accordingly. Then we have our task routes, which adds the task to the task database. And then we have our another route to get all tasks associated under a specific trip ID. And then we have the ability to delete a task by a specific ID. So that's about it for our back-end code. So let's go into a little bit of our React code. So at the very beginning, we have our index.js. And as you can see, we are using React and Redux for our global state. So we wrap our app component in our provider component and give it the store. And if we look at our store.js, this is where we have our Redux state defined. So I have three reducers: vacation reducer, which keeps track of the currently accessed vacation; the user reducer, which keeps track of the currently logged in user; and then the login reducer, which is a flag that will tell whether or not a user is logged in. Going back to our app.js, here you can see we use browser router for our routing of the page, and we have the navbar and footer outside of our route, so that way they render on every page. And here you can see we have our is logged in global state from Redux, so that way we can protect these routes. So if we try to access the new vacation route while not being logged in, we will show the sign-in page instead. And opposite, if we try to access the sign-in page while being signed in, then we will access the home page instead. Same with the register route. So if we started our home route, we just have that basic picture and the button that loads, and our Redux state mapped over there. All right, and then if we go to the sign-in page, you can see how we send that information over to the backend. So we will take the entered in login username and password, and we will post that to our login user route. And if successful, we will set that global state of that user to the currently signed in user. We will set logged in, so that way the login flag is set to true, so we can change the behavior of the navbar, and then we will redirect to the home page. If the login is unsuccessful, then we will not redirect. And here we have our component and our Redux connection. Same thing, pretty similar with the register user. We just post to the register user route and then navigate to the sign-in page once successful. And then if we go to new vacation, you can see that the information from the form gets set into a new vacation object, and then when we press the submit button, if the vacation name and destination are not entered, then we will not execute the rest of the function. But if they are entered, then we are going to make a request to the add vacation route and then add that new vacation to the database. If it is unable to get an ID, so if it is unable to add to the database, then we will not navigate to the new page. And here we have our component and our connection to Redux. Here, we're using the connection to Redux to get the user information. So when the user creates the vacation, then we can associate that user's ID. Then, if we go to vacation details, here we have all the details of our vacation. Here we format the date out of that date variable format and turn it into a readable date here. And then this useEffect hook will load as soon as this vacations page loads. Then we will make a request to the vacations. We will make a request to the vacations table, and then get the matching vacation that has the ID associated with the ID in the database. Then we will set our global vacation state to that vacation. Here we have a getUser function, so that way we can take the ID of the user that created this vacation and get the actual username. Here we make a request to the getTasks route, So that way we can get all the tasks associated with this vacation ID and then set our task variable to those tasks. And in here, we have a day activities component. So for each day of the vacation, we are gonna make an itinerary. And then in that itinerary, if we go to our day activities component, here we have the list of activities. And then here we have the ability to load each task. And the way that we do that, by the specific day, is each day activities component will get the task associated with that day based off of the day index. So if we add a task to day 1, it'll save as that task added under day 1, and then when this vacation loads, it'll load all those tasks under the corresponding day. And then that is about it for the code of my program. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, please let me know.